We all have habits, right? But what happens when a habit starts calling the shots? Well, today, we're breaking down a practical roadmap for breaking free from addiction. We're going to look at the psychology, those first crucial steps, and the tools you need to build a new life. Let's dive in. It often starts with something that feels totally harmless, a single choice. But that one moment can start to spiral, and it can take on so many different forms, from substances to things like compulsive gaming, shopping, or even scrolling social media. It's a path that can really sneak up on anyone. And this is the biological reality of what's happening. The second that substance hits your system, it unleashes this massive neurological chain reaction. So this isn't about having weak willpower. It's about powerful chemistry that is literally hijacking the way your brain thinks and feels. Okay, so with that chemical reality in mind, what are we really up against here? Because to find the right solutions, we first have to get crystal clear on the problem. So let's define what addiction truly is. Yeah, this goes so far beyond just a simple bad habit. The key word here is compulsively. It's when the behavior just keeps going, even when there are clear negative consequences, like trouble at work, health problems, or relationships falling apart. And often the person caught in that cycle is the very last one to see how out of control it's really gotten. It's really helpful to think about addiction in two different ways. On one hand, you've got physical addiction, where your actual body adapts and starts to crave the substance. But then, on the other hand, there's psychological addiction, which is an impulse that's really driven by emotional stress. This explains why someone might quit one compulsive behavior only to pick up another one. The underlying emotional trigger is still there, just looking for an outlet. Okay, so understanding the nature of addiction is step one. Now, let's talk about the journey to recovery. It all kicks off with two fundamental and, honestly, often really difficult shifts in how you think. You've heard it a million times, but it's true. The longest journey starts with a single step. And in recovery, that first step is without a doubt the hardest. It's genuinely admitting to yourself that there is a problem. And it's not just about saying the words. It's about this deep internal acceptance that something has to change. But that first step is usually blocked by this huge, powerful wall: denial. It's a natural defense mechanism, sure, but in this case, it doesn't protect you. Instead, it just creates this fog of self-deception, but lets the addiction get stronger and stronger in the shadows. And if you want to see just how thick that fog of denial can be, look at this number. A study found that out of millions of adults with an untreated alcohol problem, only 1.2% believed treatment could actually help them. I mean, think about that. The very thing that could save their life is the one thing they don't believe in. That is the trap of denial. But once you break through that denial, it opens the door to the real work, building a new life. And for a project this big, you are going to need the right tools. So let's look at the skills and strategies that make up a solid recovery toolkit. This really flips the script. Recovery isn't just about stopping something. It's about proactively building something new. A life where that old habit just doesn't fit anymore. And that means learning new ways to cope, figuring out your personal triggers, and creating a healthier foundation from the ground up. One of the most powerful coping skills is simply knowing when you're most vulnerable. And there's a really simple, really effective way to remember the most common high-risk situations. It's the acronym HALT. Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. I mean, these four things sound so simple, right? But they are incredibly powerful triggers. They drain our mental and emotional batteries, making it almost impossible to resist a craving. So this makes basic self-care, like eating well, managing your emotions, connecting with people, and getting enough rest, an absolute non-negotiable. It is your first line of defense. So beyond HALT, you have to do a personal inventory of your own specific triggers. What people, places, things, or even emotions create that urge for you. Knowing these ahead of time lets you make a plan to either steer clear of them or just handle them in a totally new way. And these lifestyle changes can have a massive impact. Things like diet, sleep, exercise, and meditation, they aren't just nice-to-haves. They are the actual pillars of recovery. They work by boosting your mood, reducing the very stress that often fuels addiction in the first place, and physically strengthening your body and mind for the road ahead. Okay, so you've got the tools. But how do you stay on the path for the long haul? Well, long-term success really depends on building an environment and a mindset that support this new life you're creating. This is a huge turning point, taking ownership. And this isn't about blame or shame. It's about shifting from a story of, this happened to me, to, okay, what am I going to do now? It means accepting responsibility, not for the addiction itself, but for the daily choices that create a better future. It's about taking back the steering wheel. And this is so critical. You do not have to do it alone. In fact, you probably can't. Connection is everything. Whether it's in a support group where you suddenly realize, wow, I'm not the only one, or it's leaning on trusted family and friends, that human safety net can make all the difference in the world. And finally, you have got to celebrate your progress. Recovery isn't one giant leap. It's a series of small, brave steps, day after day. Resisted a craving, avoided a trigger. Those are huge victories. Acknowledging those wins, no matter how small they might seem, builds the momentum you need to keep going. So when it all comes down to it, the big takeaway here isn't just about what you're leaving behind. It's about what you're actively building in its place. The real question is, with this new freedom, what kind of life are you going to create for yourself?